Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Soberful podcast. And I'm joined today, I think you guys are going to really find this story interesting, by Jonathan Schwartz. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to read this introduction because it's going to set the scene of what we're going to talk about today. So Jonathan was once a towering figure in Hollywood's elite financial circles, lived a life that many could only dream of. As a power entertainment business manager at GSO Business Management, Schwartz was entrusted with managing the wealth of some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry, including Beyoncé, Mariah Carey, Alanis Morissette, Linkin Park, and Gwyneth Paltrow. His reputation as one of Hollywood's most trusted financial advisors earned him the moniker Diva Whisperer, a reflection of his ability to cater to the unique needs of his high-profile clients. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect life, Schwartz was hiding a dark secret. Consumed by a monstrous drug habit and an uncontrollable gambling addiction, Schwartz began to embezzle millions from his clients to fund his destructive lifestyle. His double life was a carefully constructed house of cards built on lies and deceit, which ultimately came crashing down at 16 when Alanis Morissette discovered that Schwartz had stolen $4.7 million from her accounts. And I remember that story now. When I read that, I was like, oh, I remember reading about that. The fallout was swift and brutal. Schwartz's crimes were exposed, leading to his arrest and subsequent conviction. The once celebrated financial guru was now a disgraced criminal, reviled by the very industry that once revered him. His actions not only ruined his own life, but also brought significant financial losses and reputational damage to GSO Business Management. But Schwartz's story doesn't end with his fall from grace. Since his release from prison in 2020, he has embarked on a journey of redemption. Sober and co-chair of his local Gamblers Anonymous, he is determined to make amends for his past wrongdoings. He's now dedicated to proving that he's no longer the defrauding monster he once was, and is desperate to clear his name, particularly with his ex-wife and children who continue to harbor doubts about his sincerity. Whoa, there's a lot there. I mean, yeah, I want to start with, let's start with the Hollywood financial celebrity lifestyle, because we want to hear about that. And we want to, because this isn't a unique story. There's been many falls from graces in that world. Set the picture for us, what your life was like, and what was going on before the addiction really took hold.
So I was privileged enough to have a cousin that was in the entertainment space who gave me an opportunity to work as a business manager. But before he invited me to work for him, he encouraged me to work in the financial district and sort of learn more about being an accountant, being a CPA, and hone my analytical skills and really just grow professionally and build a solid foundation of strong analytical skills. And so I spent about 3.5, 4 years in the financial district of San Francisco working for a sole practitioner firm. Around 1990-ish, 94, 5, he called me up and he said, "You're ready to come work for me." And at this time, I had my wife and our first of 3 sons. We drove from San Francisco to LA, went to work for him. I was the first one in his office, the last one to leave because I didn't want the word nepotism associated with me. I had strong work ethic, struggling still on a staff accountant salary, not really, stressing a little bit about my finances, but understanding that I'm working for one of the brightest minds, my cousin, in the music industry. And this is like me going to grad school, and instead of taking out a FAFSA loan to pay for grad school, here I am learning and getting paid something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really felt privileged to be able to have that opportunity. Fast forward to 2000, 1999, 2000, my cousin's firm was acquired by Chase Manhattan Bank at that time, now known as JP Morgan. And he asked me if I wanted to get into investment banking, family wealth management. And I said, "Cuz, no, thank you. I love you for all that you've done for me and the opportunities that you've given me and the family, but I want to join another business management firm." So I knew one of the partners there from childhood. His name was Michael Oppenheim. And unfortunately, Michael Oppenheim passed away a year and a half ago. And I wasn't able to make amends with him, unfortunately, but we'll talk about that later. So Michael said, "Let's meet tonight." He made a deal proposed a deal to me that I couldn't refuse. I went to work not as a partner immediately, but as a business manager, and I brought a small book of business with me. And so now I'm in the world of Hollywood, as they say. But I just want to be clear, as a business manager, uh, I'm not in Hollywood, right? I'm just working with people who are the talent. And sometimes professionals in the entertainment space get confused about that. And the reality is, we are not the talent. We are not in the industry. We're just here as a professional being retained by a celebrity, whether it's film, TV, music, or professional sports. And that's important because I never really got excited about working with celebrities because I viewed them just like you and me. I always say they put on their socks and shoes the same way you and I put on our socks and shoes. And I think that's what helped me kind of accelerate my career because they knew that I wasn't like starstruck, that I treated them like I would treat any human being. But the entertainment industry is fairly phony. It's an industry that for the wrong reason, I'm glad I'm not in that industry anymore. People are trying to wine and dine you so that you can refer them this client or, you know, it's all about what can I do for them, right? And it's there's a lot of parties, there's a lot of the glitz and the glamour. It's for me, I didn't really get caught up in that scene until my active addiction. I kind of stayed away from schmoozing. I would go to lunches or dinners just because that was the right thing to do to expand my professional network. But if I would refer a client, I would refer them to a person not because I schmooze with them, but because they're the right fit for the client. And a lot of people don't do that. They refer because they believe that the person they're referring to will now reciprocate and give them a client. That was never my intention. And that's not how I conducted my business pre-active addiction.
Can I just clarify what a business manager is? You have talented people who start making massive sums of money in a short space of time, and they need to have that managed and allocated because there's a lot of performers who have a short shelf life, right? They may do that for 5 years and then they're not hot anymore. So it's about managing that money, ensuring their future, making that money work for them, all which is a full-time job, right? I mean, there's a lot going on. Have I got that right?
Absolutely, you did. And so the difference between a CPA and let's say a business manager, the first thing is a business manager doesn't have to be a CPA. Unfortunately, anybody can call themselves a business manager. I have
Okay.
to be a CPA, and I would, for any of your viewers or anyone in the entertainment space, I strongly encourage you to retain a business manager that has a professional designation next to his or her name. But the CPA traditionally is known for preparing and filing tax returns. That's what most people in society think of a CPA. I don't want to limit that a CPA to just solely doing that, but just for this purpose of kind of understanding the difference. For a business manager, it goes a lot deeper than that. So like we really know how to analyze the clients, whether it's their entities, whether it's their touring entity, their merchandise entity, their publishing, whatever entities they're involved in, and whatever entrepreneurial endeavors they're involved in, we could look at that respective financial statement and say, okay, here is, for example, you own this home, okay, on the asset side of the balance sheet. Now, do you have a corresponding liability, a mortgage attached to that? What's the interest rate? What's the terms? Can we improve that for you? Is a mortgage even necessary? How much money do you have in the portfolio, and is that earning a greater yield than the debt service on the mortgage? So we're really very analytical on a big picture. So the way our firm was structured is we had a touring division. So when clients would go on the road and tour, before they would say yes to their agent, we would prepare a touring budget. Here's what your profit margin is going to look like based on the guaranteed income you're getting. And we never included the possibility of overages, bonuses. So typically when an artist is on touring and they're at a venue, we know what they're guaranteed to receive in terms of income. However, if they go into overages, meaning the ticket sales are just sky high, they're going to receive a bonus for overages. But that's not included in the budget. The budgets must be conservative because they're not guaranteed overages. So we're working on their tour budgets. We also have a risk management department because we live in a very litigious society.
Mm.
Our high net worth celebrities are targets of litigation. So
Mm.
our job as business managers is also to manage their risk, bind them with insurance policies that will protect them. By way of example, if a drummer throws out his drumstick in the arena and hits someone in the eye, likelihood of me receiving a phone call that this artist is going to be sued, the artist doesn't have to worry. We've protected.
Right. Right.
So we have a royalty department that collects all the royalty revenue streams, whether it's from sales of their music or whether it's their publishing. And so there's a lot of different sources of areas of income that particularly music artists are receiving. So we have a bookkeeper who collects all that income, pays all the bills, which creates that financial statement I referred to earlier. And so clients would entrust us. We had power of attorney to sign their checks because they're busy on the road. They don't have time to deal with this. And then, you meet with them regularly and go over their finances. And so that's in a nutshell. We didn't invest their money as business managers. Some business managers do. We outsource that to asset managers because that's not our area of expertise. But as the business manager, we're the quarterback of any and all of their financial world, individually and or professionally. One of the things you mentioned I want to comment on, if I may,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of like how quickly do they spend this money? Because they could be hot in the eyes of their fans today, but maybe tomorrow they're not so hot. And that's music, sports, and film, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
typically in the world of in the professional sports world, let's say a client comes in a football player, he's a high draft pick. I'm making this up. He gets a $30 million 5-year deal. In his mind, now he wants to spend it all. He wants to buy his family homes. He wants to buy
Yeah.
a car,
Yeah.
right? They want to spend their money irresponsibly because many of them have come from a place of growing up poor.
I'd say most people, right? I mean, the majority of people have come from like just poor or just very average, this is a whole new world.
Whole new world. They don't have a healthy relationship with money.
Mm.
They haven't surrounded themselves quite yet with professionals who can help them achieve their goals. And so now what happens is they believe that $30 million contract is not their last contract. That they're going to perform so well on the field and they're going to
Not
earn.
get injured.
Right. They're not considering getting injured precisely. Right. And so if we personal disability insurance, professional disability insurance for them, we can insure their legs, their arms, and we did all
Wow.
those things to protect them. But the reality is, I always encouraged my clients in this example, the football players or the baseball players, assume this is your last contract, your first and only contract. That's the lifestyle I want you to live. Let's
Mm.
use this money as if it's your last dollars, and I encourage you to spend your money wisely. You don't need to go out and buy 10 cars. You don't need to
Mm.
go out and buy this huge mansion. Buy a humble, comfortable residence. And frankly, you may not even want to buy a residence because the state that you play in might not be the state you want to live in. So these are discussions that we as business managers would have with clients. And many of them listened and others did not. And
I mean, that's fascinating because you always, like, every so often you'll see a story of some, either pop star or huge sports star who goes bankrupt. And you're like, how is that possible? They were like, you're just like, how can you not have any money left? That's crazy. But now this makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And it's very sad because we could only encourage, right? We could only provide them the information,
Yeah.
and it's up to them. And sadly, it's not even up to them many times. Many times
Have pressure from families
they get
and,
pressure from
mm,
family or friends. Like now I can have access to a cool nightclub, right? And that's not
yeah.
limited to professional athletes. That's in all of Hollywood, right? And these people are not your friends. They're
Mm,
hanger honors and they're taking advantage of you to have access to Hollywood.
mm,
And unfortunately, many people get caught up in that and they don't see that difference. They view them
mm,
as friends from childhood and they just want to hang out and I'm going to take
mm,
care of them. Well,
mm,
maybe there needs to be a balance. And
mm,
these are some hard conversations as business managers you must have with your clients.
mm. Okay, well that's fascinating. So this was all going well. How did your addiction start?
So I want to say that when I grew up, at 4 years old, my father abandoned me and my
Mm.
younger brother. And my mother was forced to take 3 jobs to put food on the table for us and a roof over our head. And so she ultimately took that stress out on me, which created childhood trauma. And I never dealt with my childhood trauma until 46 years into my life. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't use trauma as an excuse. I want to be clear. I take
Mm-hmm.
full responsibility for my poor choices. There's evidence-based literature, lots of it, that supports that trauma can contribute to maladaptive behaviors, including but not limited to addiction. Particularly, my father had this similar addiction that I did. He was a gambling addict. He was a cocaine addict. He committed infidelity. These things that I thought I would never want, I never wanted to be like my father. I became much worse than my father. And so that started sort of like I never for the outside world, for the outer world, for the Hollywood, for people in my community, I had to pretend I was Superman once I started my gambling and cocaine addiction.
Mm.
And inside I was truly insecure with this like low self-esteem.
Yeah.
And I lived, as they say in the big book, I lived this double life,
Mm.
right? And I lived in fear when I started in about 2010 gambling and taking that first amount of money from Alanis Morissette. And I can say that only because her story went public. I will not reveal the other 5 or so clients that I embezzled from
Sure.
because I want to honor that they want it to be sealed, and I will respect that. Because none of them, nor did Alanis, deserve having their money stolen, me violating the fiduciary responsibility that I had to them, and the moral compass and integrity I thought I had. That's all on me. They didn't deserve any of this. And so my active, addiction started in 2010.
And it was cocaine and gambling.
It was started with gambling.
What kind of gambling? In the casinos or
Well, so sports gambling, I gambled
sports
every
gambling?
day for 6 years. I turned over my records, my phone records to the federal government, and they could see that I bet at a minimum one time a day, literally, for 6 years on
Wow.
the NBA, college basketball, college football, NFL, baseball. And I didn't just bet one game, I bet every game on the board in that day. I was what started out as let me just borrow this money from a simple bet from a client and I'll repay them. I had my own money. At this point, I was making very good money. I should have just taken it from my account, but I was afraid my wife would see it and my partners would see that I'm gambling. And so now what started out with 1 week of, just let me have some fun and gamble, it progressed and became obviously gambling is a progressive addiction. And now I'm chasing the first week that I didn't pay back. Now it's the first month that I didn't pay back. Now it's month 6, and I'm becoming a degenerate. And I don't like to identify as a degenerate, but just for purposes of illustrating, I was a degenerate in my active addiction. And then as I gambled for 5+ years, almost 6 years every day, I couldn't take that anymore. I had a lot of suicidal ideation because I knew inevitably that I would rupture my family's life, that my 3 beautiful sons and my ex-wife now, at the time my wife, I'm going to destroy their lives. Why am I doing this? How am I going to fix this? I'm going to destroy my firm that I'm a partner in. I'm going to hurt so many people. Jonathan, I'm scared.
How do you embezzle? I mean, you just take money from the like Alanis's account? Is that how like because I'm assuming you always have like you do that to pay bills and pay things and like you're managing all of that. So you're just like, oh, we need to take this and it's a made up thing. Is that how you do it?
Yeah,
Is that how it
absolutely.
works?
So I
Right.
had power of attorney.
Right.
Sign the check. So Monday through Sunday is the gambling week, right? Sunday night at the end, you have to decide after the last football game. I know how much I have to pay my bookie on Tuesday. And so now I'm calling up now I can't sleep. I didn't sleep any night over the 5-6 year period. I had fear if I heard a siren. I had nightmares what's going to happen to my family. And I didn't have the courage to ask for help because I viewed help as a child as being weak. When today, one of my many messages we'll talk about later in recovery is please ask for help. And I
Yeah.
have the courage to ask for help. I wish I had the courage to ask for help. Today I asked
Was it the crazy like just next week I'll get out of it. I'll put the money back. Like next week, like I just need a good streak. Then I'll be good. I'll put it all back, and then I'll never do it again. Is that like the
yes,
constant lie?
yes, the classic mindset of the grandiosity that the gamblers have in their mentality. Their mentality is the fantasy, the grandiosity. I'm going to win this back, and I'm going to be able to. For many people, it's not win it back. I'm going to win, and I'm going to spend this money on a yacht. Well, for me, it wasn't about that. It was chasing money to pay back client one, and then it became client two, and so on. I
Mm.
did not like gambling, but I was gambling. There's no such thing as a good gambler, but I was the worst gambler because if one was a good gambler, they'd bet on a single game, maybe here and there, and take the loss. Me, I bet on, like I said earlier, the board, every single game. And I didn't just bet on this, who's going to win and point spread, but I bet on parlays and teasers and all these different forms of bets one can make. It was insane. And it was, as I reflect back on that period of my life, it was just, I was living in insanity. And so, toward the tail end of my gambling run, with the suicidal ideation becoming more intense, I decided, let me just start doing cocaine. And
Were
that's
you
when
like, I was wondering about the cocaine. So were you going to like Hollywood parties and that kind of stuff? Or was it like,
I wasn't an avid attendee at a lot of the parties. Yes, I went to the Grammys. Yes, I went to the BET Awards. And yes, I did all that. Rarely did I go to house parties, very infrequently, because I still had a responsibility to my family at this point. I thought I was a great father, but I was not a great father because I wasn't always emotionally present for my kids. I thought
mm,
I was a great husband, but here I am cheating on my wife, not being emotionally present for her. The party scene wasn't my scene, but of course I attended, a reasonable amount. And yes, there were a lot of wild things. Like I've gone to the Playboy Mansion, a couple times, and I never participated in drugs or alcohol or any other bad choices at these parties, but the cocaine started toward that tail end where
right,
I used cocaine in moderation. Like in college, I would maybe do it once or twice a year.
right.
Right? And that was that was when I could do things in moderation. But at this point now in the gambling and the active addiction mindset, there's no such thing as moderation for me. It's extremes. Like there's no in between. It's like
Hmm.
I'm going to do it and I'm going to go in all 100%. So I have this friend. She told me that she was at a TGA Fridays here in Los Angeles, and she and her friend were approached by a waitress asking them if they want to try cocaine, and they're like, no, we don't do cocaine. And then they ultimately went in the bathroom and did cocaine. And so when my friend told me the story, I said, can you give me the number of this waitress that gave you cocaine? Because I'm interested in using cocaine. And so that was the start of me using cocaine for 6+ months every day and waking up with wet sheets, just absolutely soaked. And I have coronary artery disease and my heart's racing. And that's why I think the professionals who assessed me suggested that, yeah, you were just like, I wanted to get caught with Alanis. I couldn't take it anymore, but I didn't have the courage to ask for help, like I said earlier, and come clean. So the cocaine really, really led me down a darker path than just,
Yeah, it's awful. Cocaine is just the most awful drug. I mean, I would wake up and just want to kill myself. It was awful.
yeah.
So this sounds just beyond miserable. So you're like the successful businessman, happy families, trying to pretend that that is what's going on, with the most incredible double life. The guilt, the shame, the fear must have been intense. How did you get caught? How did it all come crashing down?
So I was on tour. I was helping Beyonce on her Lemonade tour in Tampa Bay when she was launching that tour. And as the business manager, my responsibility was, look at her expenses. She's an incredible, incredible performer and artist. I have so much respect for her. She's such a hard worker and really wants to provide the best show for her fan base. And so what happens with that sometimes is that means they want to increase their production. They want to make it just so elaborate.
Yeah.
And so at times I would meet with Beyonce and say, this is now what your profit margin is. Do you want to decrease some of these costs, or are you okay with that, this profit margin? And to her credit, it wasn't about the cost as much as it was giving the fans who pay a lot of money to come see her the best show that she can give them. So
Wow.
I'm on tour with her, not on tour, I'm at her rehearsals in Tampa, and I get a call from my partners that they're asking me what happened to this money. Because at this point, my partners received a phone call from Atlantis fired me in end of 2015. The irony is she went to that same cousin who I started my career with. He came back, he left Chase Manhattan, started his own firm. She hired him.
Hmm.
His partner calls me, great irony, and calls my partners and asks, Atlantis is missing $4.6 million. What did she use that for? And they didn't know, so they called me. That was the first moment. So of course I'm still in denial, and I say to them, "Yeah, she knows she took that money. She spent it on a cannabis business." I just, again, lying, being dishonest, manipulative, all the common traits that I had in my active addiction. I thought I was still Superman and I could beat this system. I'm going to resolve this. So let me fly home. I'm going to fly home. So I get on a plane, go back to LA. I meet with my partners. I said, I'll get Alanis to sign a document when I knew darn well there was no shot of me getting Alanis to sign the document. So now I'm starting to get more and more, scared that inevitably I'm going to get caught, and still arrogant and still with an ego. I went with my wife at the time to celebrate what would have been our 23rd year anniversary in Santa Barbara. And I get a call from my former partner, Michael, as I mentioned him earlier. And I had told them that I would do a lie detector test. I'm trying to play poker with them, right? Like, I'm hoping they're not going to accept this invitation. Well, that call that I received was an invitation for me, not even an invitation, it was a demand for me to come in and meet with a former FBI polygrapher, and take a lie detector test. And so I got the call on a Saturday or whatever day it was when we were celebrating. And now I knew in that moment that I had to tell my wife everything. She knew nothing. I kept this dark secret from every person, not my wife, not my best friend from upstate New York, not anybody. So that's what made this so much worse. Like, I'm keeping this secret and living this horrible crime and horrible behavior inside and suppressing it. And we know that in recovery we shouldn't suppress our emotions, but that I didn't know that at that time, or I knew it but just couldn't connect with my emotions. And so what happened was I drove down. This was, I think, on May 8th, 2016, because my sober date is May 9th, 2016. I'm driving down to Santa Barbara. I tell her that night, excuse me, I'll rewind a little bit. I Googled how to beat a lie detector test. Like, here I am thinking I can beat a lie detector test. So not only do I believe I can beat this test, but the moment I get in the car, I make sure that my car is filled with cocaine, and I know I'm going to call my bookie. So I'm driving an hour and a half to Santa Barbara. I'm snorting lines and lines of cocaine to take a lie detector test. Who does this but
Oh
me?
God. Yeah.
So I go into the lie detector test, obviously in no condition to take a lie detector test. I make my last bet to my bookie. I put my feet up on the desk of the polygrapher as if I'm a big shot. Lie down in the chair and let it roll back. Imagine this scene. This guy's probably looking at me like, who is he? And all I'm thinking as we start, I didn't realize that part of, like, taking this lie detector test is the person giving the test, the polygrapher, is trying to build a rapport with me. So I'm thinking he really likes me. He's asking me a lot of questions. I'm thinking, like, I'm like saying to myself, this schmuck, I'm gonna beat this guy, right? This is how high my ego was. And so, lo and behold, I failed the test. How did I know I failed the test? Well, when I left, I still thought I did really well. And so I called my attorney and he didn't answer. And so I drove back to Santa Barbara. And then shortly after arriving back at the hotel, I tried to log into my computer from work, and I no longer had access.
Mm,
I
mm,
called my assistant and she said, I have access. So I said, uh-oh, now this is that moment where I'm caught. There's nothing I can do.
mm.
And so I called my attorney and he said, yes, Jonathan, just so you know, you failed that test worse than anybody in the history of this former FBI agent's polygrapher. I don't know why you agreed to do this. You need to come see me, and we need to try and work out a plea agreement right away, because you could face up to 23 years in prison.
I can't imagine, like, I don't know about you, like, I look back on my former self when I was drinking and using, and it's like a different person. But you're telling the story, Jonathan, I cannot imagine the fear. But maybe you were just still in denial, but it must have been like carrying a mountain on your shoulders of just being crushed by this.
Yeah, no, I was certainly in denial, but no, I was in fear. I lived in fear 24/7 every day for 6 years. And I don't expect anybody to empathize with me. It was a result of my poor choices, right? So
Yeah, and thank you for owning that. I mean, yeah,
it is,
that's
that's just my choice. It was my
yeah,
choice, and I could have asked for help sooner again, but I
yeah,
didn't. And because I again lived this mindset, I'm just going to pay it back.
yeah.
And So yeah, living in fear, I can't put it in words. I can't tell you how much pain I suffered with every day, knowing that I was stealing from people who were such beautiful people that didn't deserve this. I was disrespecting my partners. Despite all that, I continued with this behavior. I don't live in my past, but I don't forget my past.
Yeah.
I certainly don't live in it. And I believe in personal accountability. Like you said earlier, I own it. I take full responsibility, but it doesn't make what I did wrong right.
Yeah.
And the only good that I take away is that my clients did get reimbursed and paid back 100%. Again, I know that still doesn't make what I did wrong right, but it makes me feel a lot better than I would had
Yeah.
we not paid them back.
Okay, so you've spectacularly failed it. You've lost your job. What happens next? You have to tell your wife, you get arrested?
So the night that I was called to do to take the lie detector test is when I revealed to her what was going on. And the next day, I went and saw Nathan Hochman, who was my criminal attorney, who's now the district attorney of Los Angeles. And he did a great job behind the scenes negotiating a 4 to 6 year plea agreement because
Mm-hmm.
my guideline could have called for 23 years. And
Okay.
even 4 to 6 years, I was super scared. Right.
Mm.
Right now, looking back, I'm grateful that I
Mm.
didn't get a 23-year sentence and it was a 6 year sentence. But it was in that courtroom on May 3rd, 2017 was one of the most difficult times of my life because I saw sitting on the side of the government my wife and one of my children, and that was like now like I'm sitting trying not to cry in the courtroom, but they were there. That really hurt me, but that hurt me then. But now in my recovery journey of almost 9 years, I've learned that they wouldn't be sitting on the federal side of the courtroom at my sentencing if I didn't do what I did. So they're not to blame. That's their choice. I hurt them. I'm to blame because I'm the one that put them in that seat. So you understand the concept?
Yeah.
The people I hurt wouldn't have been hurt if I didn't do what I did. How they
Yeah.
react to their pain and their hurt as a result of my consequences, I choose to respect that because I put them there.
But wait, tell me how did you get sober in the middle of all of this?
Well, getting sober was like, so what happened was after the May 8th day, the
Mm.
day of discovery and reckoning with the lie detector test, I met with my attorney, and he advised me, and my wife supported it, that I go into treatment. So I'm like, I'm not going into any residential treatment, and the reason why is my son's, leaving, and he wants to go to summer camp, and I want to spend time with them. I'm still in denial. And it took me a couple days to ponder it. And then I said, okay, I agree to go to an outpatient because I still want the flexibility of seeing family. So instead of going to a residential, I took the easy road out and I went to an outpatient program in 2016 called Bet Teshuva. And they specialize in gambling and substance use. And I didn't go there for the right reason. I went there to try and get my alternate sentencing. And so when I say I didn't go for the right reason, I didn't go because I wanted to go or that I wanted help. I went because I wanted to reduce.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I didn't really start working the steps until about 4 or 5 months into this outpatient program. And then I found a great sponsor and I started working the steps. And this was pre-sentencing. This was when I was on a 14-month pre-sentencing with the government, pending sentencing. And the first step was the one that I just couldn't understand. It says that I have to understand that, we admitted we were powerless over gambling or drugs and our life has become unmanageable. The first thing I said to my sponsor is, I don't understand this. Me, Jonathan, powerless and unmanageable? Are you kidding me? He said, schmuck, are you kidding me? He said, you're facing a 23-year sentence in a few months and you don't think your life is unmanageable and you're powerless? I said, good point. Let's get started on step one. And that was the moment where my denial really ceased. And I started to accept that it's time for me to start this journey of recovery. Fast forward to now, 12 steps is my life.
Okay, so you go to prison for how long?
So I get sentenced on May 3rd. On July 11th, 2017, I surrender for what was supposed to be a 6 year sentence.
How that must have been scary.
Very scary. I hired a prison consultant because like I was afraid, like my kids were afraid. I was afraid, like, am I going to get raped in
You hear
prison?
terrible stories. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was really, of course, I was very scared. But the consultant eased my fears, but it didn't ease my fears for different reasons. And so the moment I walked into this federal prison camp in Sheridan, Oregon, and you spend a few hours in a cell before they release you, and you're lucky if you're
Wow.
released down to the camp the same day. But I was fortunate enough to be released to the camp, and so I walk into this camp wearing orange Crocs and the green slacks and the green shirt, the uniform that we must wear, and everyone knows that's a newcomer coming because I'm wearing orange Crocs. So I'm carrying a little toothbrush and I'm crying the whole walkway down. And I'm like looking around and going, this is where I'm going to be for the next 72 months. And so I cried pretty much for a good 6 months in prison. I was fortunate enough to have a handful of quality men around me that said, it's time for you to grow up, stop counting the days, and just learn to accept that you're going to be here a long time. And that was I'm glad that I had people like that in prison.
Were there other prisoners or people who worked there?
Other prison, no, people that work there could care less about you. The
Really?
correction officers, if, like I broke two knuckles. The medical team tells me to go take a walk around the track. I got a concussion. They
Wow.
I had to encourage them to take me to the hospital in handcuffs, and they did very little tests on me. And they had me
Wow.
return right away, and I had to figure out how to walk back to my bed. They don't take great care of you. I was not, they don't. It's the trick when you go to the medical team is you're not going to get anything you need. Just accept that they're going to tell you to drink water and walk the track. And so there were a lot of people
Wow.
who lacked medical care that they needed, me included. But it was at the end of the day when after 6 months I chose to accept
This was my
this was
reality.
my reality, and I got a great job thanks to one of my friends in camp. I worked in education and I was in charge of giving everybody access to the computer, which made me really, it opened me up because most of the inmates wanted to access to that computer room. So now all the different kind of diverse people are coming in there, right? So it's different socioeconomic status, different religion, different race. And I got to know everybody. And I learned that regardless of, I don't judge anybody. I didn't judge a book by its cover. Like getting to know like the drug dealers, for example. I taught a victim impact class in prison so that I could help people identify their victims and so they can start accepting responsibility for having victims and their poor choices. And so I started to really immerse myself in teaching classes like this one victim impact class and accounting classes, basic accounting for people that don't even have a GED and helping them with their GED and just getting to know like the drug dealers in the victim impact class in the first few weeks of the class couldn't accept that that they have any victims. And I would say to them, but you do. You sold drugs to someone who may have become addicted or may have even, God forbid, died from an overdose. And their
Or who
response,
neglected their kids that night, or
yes, and their response was, well, if I didn't sell drugs to them, someone else would have, but you did sell drugs to them. And once they could accept that, then seeing them change was
mm,
such a reward in prison. Like hearing them on the phone talking to their loved ones now was not them using the F bomb and cursing their partner out. It was, I love you and I miss you. And
mm.
so starting to be of service really started for me in prison. And I carry that till today.
How long did you serve for?
So I served 33 months incarcerated. The reason why I went to Sheridan is they had a residential drug and alcohol program, which took a year off my sentence. So that went from 72 to 60. Then I had some good time because I was a nerd in prison and I'm a nerd now. And during COVID, because of my coronary artery disease, I was allowed to get out early. So
Mm,
I was released like 7 or 9 months earlier, but I had to serve 16 months on home confinement wearing an ankle monitor,
right.
which was awful because I don't have a job. I'm a felon. How am I going to live? And thank God my mother and my stepfather helped me get an apartment because I didn't have a dollar to my name.
Wow.
And so that I was challenged with, even though I'm well educated, I couldn't get a job. I had to get a job at Dunkin' Donuts. And then I got fired from Dunkin' Donuts because I wasn't cleaning the store well, and then I went work for another place. And after just not realizing that as labeled a felon, the challenges are going to be high. And so what I said was, let me go to addiction studies school and get my KDAC. And now let me go to grad school and become an LMFT, specializing in addiction and trauma. And that led me to the path where I'm at now. But re-entering society isn't easy for as
Yeah.
a felon, and I thought it would be. But you know what? The Dunkin' Donuts and the other job and not getting the jobs I wanted really helped me become more humble. And the ego started to fade away. And I felt like now I'm really living a program that behavior is congruent with pro recovery behavior by adopting all these beautiful principles like humility and honesty and things like that.
That's quite a story. What I'm hearing from you, like that enormous pressure that you lived with, the fear and all of that, like the relief from not having to live like that. So you're in prison, you're in Dunkin' Donuts, you retrained. It's the freedom in your mind, isn't it, that you can't describe?
Correct. It's funny. Someone asked me on a podcast, like, how would you describe recovery? And I used that word freedom. Like
Mm,
I could walk around. I don't need to look over my shoulders anymore.
mm,
I don't
mm,
have to have fears in my head. I don't have to catastrophize or future trip or negative think anymore. Like
mm,
this program, I know it sounds so cliche, but for me, this program, Gamblers Anonymous, AA, NA, this fellowship, these are the people I allow in my inner circle today.
mm,
The commonality in the rooms, sponsoring people now. I'm finally in my authentic self. I lived a life in my pseudo self, and it was
mm,
I needed prison, to be honest, to help me understand a lot of the things that I wasn't able to reflect on until I went to prison and spent countless hours reading and countless time just pondering, like, how could I do what I did, and trying to develop a plan where I can be of service to people when I come out and not make the same mistakes.
Can I ask what are the relationships like with your sons, and your wife divorced you?
My wife divorced me. We don't have a relationship right now. I made amends to her when I came home over
Hmm.
the phone. But as you know, we make amends really not
Yeah.
for an expectation of what the
Hmm.
recipient's going to say, but for me, I wanted to and needed to. My younger son, I have three beautiful adult sons. My younger son and I speak every day.
Mm,
I'm blessed just to hear his voice. My middle son doesn't communicate with me. He's hurt. You know, I
mm,
was his hero. I let him
mm,
down,
mm,
and I turn it over to my higher power, Hashem, which is my God, and every day I pray that they'll come back in my life when they're supposed to come back in my life. And my older son, we see each other maybe 4 times a year. I'm grateful that I get those 4 times a year. Do I wish it was
yeah.
more? Of course, but Jonathan's will got him in this place. So, like I said, my higher power will turn my kids over to me when the time is right. They know Daddy loves them. I love them
Mm.
more than anything in this world. And I just hope that one day I'll be at a barbecue with the four of us.
So what do you do now? You work at a treatment center, or?
I do. So now I work at Altus Rehab, which is a 6-bed luxury detox and residential in Encino, California. We're actually having a grand opening of our second home this afternoon. And I am a program director there, and I am an AMFT. And so I'm providing therapy to countless people. I also do a lot of teletherapy with the Chabad Treatment Center in Los Angeles, which is a Medi-Cal facility. That's where I got my start as an intern, and so I'm paying it back. And I just love being around people who are struggling with addiction and mental health. And, as a therapist, you really encourage not to self disclose. But for me, unless self disclosure can help the client, and because I work in a substance use facility, my self disclosure makes establishing a rapport and earning the client's trust pretty much happen in real time in the first session. And generally,
It's our superpower.
it's our superpower. Absolutely well said. Yeah, because building a therapeutic alliance is a struggle for many therapists. For me, working specifically with people like me, that alliance is I'm still earning their rapport and their trust, of course, but it's just so beautiful. And I know that as much as I want to try and help everybody, it's not possible. I wish it was. I wish more people would come to treatment centers and enter them, not like I did when I went to my outpatient, right? That I want you to come here for the right reasons. What are you internally and externally motivated to maintain a sustainable recovery? If you are, we're going to give you all the tools. and not just focus on addiction, but what contributed to your dependency on substances. And for many of them, the answer is similar to mine. It's the childhood experiences. It's some form of PTSD later in adolescence. Let's work on that when you walk into Altus Rehab, because yes, we'll work on the traditional relapse prevention skills and all that. But we really want you to leave here with no unresolved trauma or issues, because if you're still carrying anything that's unresolved, the likelihood of you maintaining a sustainable recovery goes down significantly. Give yourself a chance to succeed. Be vulnerable in therapy and treatment. Talk about your traumas. Let's try and resolve the trauma so that you no longer have any emotions suppressed inside you. You flush it out. And now let's build an aftercare plan that just includes going to meetings, getting a sponsor, building a sober peer network. You will live that freedom that you and I, Veronica, are talking about.
I have a couple of quick questions if you have time.
Of course.
Were you able to make amends to people like Alanis Morissette? How did the amends process go?
So the answer is no. So I was prohibited from talking to my direct victims or my partners or my former employees until I was done with probation. I was done with probation in August of last year. August of 23. And August of 24. It's time for me to start making amends. Will I have their phone numbers? Probably. Are they the same? Probably not, but I'll try and reach out to their management team. And all I can do is ask if it's okay if I can come and meet with client A, B, and C and make amends. And I want to make amends to not just my direct victims. There are many indirect victims, clients who I didn't embezzle from, right? The majority I didn't embezzle from. They were embarrassed by what I did. They looked up to me.
Right.
My partners, I want to make amends to them. My former employees, I want to make amends. And to people in the industry that I worked with, entertainment lawyers, managers, agents, asset managers. I did make one amends to an asset manager several months ago. He represented some of the clients that I embezzled from, and I put him in a really bad position. He was probably the best asset manager in the entire entertainment space, and he trusted in me, and I lied to him when I asked for money. And so he, too, is in recovery, which made the amends go very well for me.
That's an extraordinary story, and it's really something to own your shit the way that you did, right? There was no kind of like, it wasn't fair, or like it was, complete surrender, which is the only way. And I think your second act sounds beautiful. And, I hope very much that you see, understanding the pain of your family, and all you can do is keep your side of the street clean and hope that those bonds come back. And I'm sure they will.
Yeah, thank you. They will, because today I don't expect people to believe me through the words that come out of my mouth, but trying to observe my action. I'm not perfect, but this program is not about perfection. It's about progress. And I try and take the next right action. And I think that's why I want to be on your podcast, because I want to spread the message of asking for help and being vulnerable and taking accountability. But a lot of the details will be in my upcoming book, which I hope to have released in the future, and a movie to follow. So I'm excited about the future.
What's the book called?
Name is still untitled.
Okay. Well, please let us know. We'll have you back to talk about that.
Please.
Jonathan, this has been amazing. If people want to find you, are you on social media?
I am. I don't have a huge following, but we're just building it organically. But it's at The Real Jonathan Schwartz, Instagram.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was such an inspiring story. I'm so glad you're okay. I'm so glad that you made it through all of that and are giving back in the way that you are.
Thank you so much for having me, Veronica. I appreciate what you're doing with your podcast. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks everybody for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on Jonathan's story when this comes out. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you're following the show. Take care, everybody.
I dreamt that you were twisting through 7 suns of gold, and the gypsy was insisting